Hey all, it's Mooch. Welcome to Minding Your mAhs episode 4. Tonight it's all about marrying batteries. And do we need to do it? And the first question might be, what is marrying batteries? It's a concept in the community where we try to keep them all essentially matched in performance and all aging the same way. But what's really important is, and it's the first thing up here, is married batteries, it has nothing to do with matching the batteries. We get them completely randomly from the vendor. They could be, better performing and newer, worse performing and older. We get our batteries randomly, 3 months old, a year and a half old, we don't know. Now, there's some things you should do to help match them as best as possible, but battery marriage is not about matching. It's about what happens once you put a set together. And the first thing we should probably do is define battery marriage. Really, that just means buying and using them together. Assembling a set, whether it's the single, we can't use to really marry because you're just a single, but whether it's 2, 3, 4, 5 batteries, always used together, purchased together, same model battery, and that helps them age the same rate. We'll go into that in more detail. But there's 3 primary reasons that we marry batteries. Number 1, it's about risk reduction. The batteries we use are not inherently safe. The risks in using them, they're not meant to be used outside battery packs with protection electronics. There's serious risk of injury or property damage if you misuse them or mishandle them. Now, that doesn't mean to be scared of them. It just means to respect the power that's in these batteries and not misuse them or mishandle them. And battery marriage is one of the things we can do to reduce the risks of using them. I mean, thousands and thousands of vapers use batteries every day for years with no problems. This is one of the ways we can reduce those risks, so we can be one of those vapers. It's also about extending battery life. The more we can do to help a battery age the same as the rest of its married set, the longer that set's gonna last, because no one battery in it is being stressed more than the other batteries. And the third thing is reducing frustration. If one of the batteries always comes down to a lower voltage than the others, we're gonna get earlier low battery alerts. And that's frustrating as hell. If they all come down at the same level, less frustration. The reason we have to, or we want to, marry batteries is every battery is different. When they come down, in addition to the model of the battery, every battery has slightly different capacity, slightly different internal resistance, which defines how much it sags when using it. By choosing batteries all bought at the same time, all the same model battery, hopefully they're from the same batch, we can help them come down. Let's say they're all coming down in voltage, come down at the same time. And what it can do by having each battery exposed to the same operating conditions, always as a set, we're trying to have them all age at the same rate. Now, these batteries all have slight differences between them when we first got them. We're trying to keep those differences from growing any faster than they might were if they weren't married. Let's say we used one battery in a mech at huge current levels, and then another one at 15 watts in a regulated device, and then we pull them together and then we use them somewhere else. Well, those batteries now are undergoing different levels of abuse, and if you throw them together in a mod, just marry them for one use, they're going to go down to different voltages more, or have a wider spread in voltage than batteries you're always using together and subjecting to the same environmental conditions, the same charging, and all those different things. It helps keep the voltages more equal, and I was saying less stress, fewer late or low battery alerts. If one battery is coming down and one goes down a lot faster than the other, the mod's going to signal low battery alert for this one low battery, while the other one's sitting way up here. Where if they always come down maybe a lot closer, you can go down further and keep vaping before you get a low battery alert. So battery marriage and having them all stressed the same amount and used the same way helps keep those voltages as equal as we can. The differences will always come out in the end, especially as the batteries age. Less dependency on the safety circuitry. We want to do that as much as possible. Regulated mods aren't inherently safe. We're depending on these safety circuits to protect us, but the less dependence we have on them, the better. If we can keep all the voltages coming down together, that's much better than having go way down and going, oh, the safety circuit will turn off the mod earlier. Well, we're getting low battery alerts earlier, and we're really just saying, hey, I trust that low-cost safety circuit that may not have been tested thoroughly enough with my life. That life is a little dramatic, but with my health and with the mod. Let's not trust it. Let's try to keep those voltages equal and just have it get down to a level where the mod goes, both batteries are low, you know, I can't make that wattage, I'm turning off. Also, less balancing is needed. If one battery is always coming down very low, and you have a mod that balances the batteries, and especially if you're charging via USB, one is always going down very low, well, that one may come back way up. Well, you've got a much bigger gap in there. You need a lot more balancing of those batteries to keep them healthy in that mod, and that can take hours and hours and may not always be done by that mod or done correctly. If they're always coming down as close as they can and then recharging back up on the mod, that's better. And it's less balancing, and it's just healthier for the batteries, less stressed. Now, if you're charging them externally, which I recommend all the time because you can monitor them, you can see the voltage, you can see the capacity over the months and see if it starts dropping and the batteries are wearing out, then you automatically rebalance the batteries. But a lot of people charge via USB, and it's something to think about. Battery marriage is even more important if you're charging by USB because you're trusting the balancing circuitry and the safety circuitry in that mod to keep you healthy, to prevent any problems. We want to do that as little as possible. Battery marriage can help with that. All of this for battery marriage assumes we have decent matching batteries to start. Now, we can do that by buying the same model battery at the same time. That's all we can do. It's still a crapshoot as to what we get, but that's better than buying a 3-year-old, not buying, but finding a 3-year-old 1500 mAh battery and matching it up with a brand new 3000 mAh battery and going, okay, we're ready to rock. No. But at least buying them together and other things, we can start with a decent match. If the batteries start off at very different levels, marriage just means you're going to start there at a bad point, and it just gets worse as they age. Now, I had done a bunch of testing to find out really what is the levels at which we have to start to worry. Like, how much worry is there as these things age? How much do they diverge? How much of a difference in voltage between batteries is a concern or not a concern? And we'll go into that next. Okay, testing. I'm going to do this quickly because you can always freeze frame and look at the data a little bit closer here. Essentially, I did over 6,000 discharges. And believe it or not, 6,000 discharges is a very, very limited test of a very tiny portion of the batteries we use over a very small set of circumstances. But it gave me some idea of how much marriage might be needed, or how much of a voltage spread there might be, just so I can come up with some kind of recommendations for the community. Basically what I did is I took sets of 3 batteries in series. First I started with new HG2s and 25R 5s, Samsung Green 25Rs. I took 4 sets of the HG2s, 4 sets of the 25Rs, and I put them each through 200 cycles, each set, from new 200 cycles, where each one was done at, where did I write that, 75 watts discharge, which gets them pretty damn hot, and a 2 amp charge. So fairly abusive, but it gave me an idea what we needed to think about. Now, at the end, the internal resistance went up 10 to 15% after 200 cycles, and we lost about 20 to 30% of capacity. That's about expected. End of life is usually around 30–40% loss, but that's down to 2.5 volts, somewhere in the 200 cycle range. So I was happy with the numbers that I'd got. Now, the voltage spread when I started between these 3 batteries over the 4 sets of HG2s, the 4 sets of 25Rs, it's about 40 to 70 millivolts in the spread in voltages. Namely, got 3 batteries in, and these were bought from 4 different vendors over a multi-month period. So it was kind of a random selection of batteries. And they matched into the highest to lowest one. After charge, you let them sit for an hour. You measure the spread, 40 to 70 millivolts, 0.04 to 0.07 volts. After 200 cycles, the spread was 0.1 to 0.3 volts. Not too bad. That's not a real concern unless you're going down very low in voltage. And I decided then, well, let's see how representative is the data do I have? So I took all these batteries here and I mixed them. I mixed all the HG2s randomly, I mixed all the 25Rs, and I put those 4 new mixed sets now through another cycle, and I still got 100 to 300 millivolts. So I'm pretty confident in those results that I got earlier weren't just particular combinations of batteries giving me that kind of spread. I then took a mixed set of new and used HG2s and 25Rs. Namely, I had about 6 or 7 used ones, and I just started mixing them in, 2 or 1 or something in there. The use was anywhere from a few dozen cycles up to maybe 100 cycles. Nothing really abusive, but definitely older cells. And out of that, the spread jumped up. Now the total spread, interestingly, only went from 300 millivolts to 350 millivolts. Most of the capacity loss is upfront, and you don't lose that much more later on. Like the capacity loss for cycles 1 to 50 is a lot greater than cycles 151 to 200. So we aren't going to see much more spread in voltage or capacity loss, but the average went up a lot higher, which makes sense because we have newer cells and older cells mixed. So the spread was going to tend up at the higher end of this range. Using mixed model batteries, like taking an HB6 and an HG2, a 1500 mAh HB6 and a 3000 mAh HG2, cycling them, well, that immediately brings it down below the 2.5 volt rating of the batteries and can very badly damage the battery because it can easily go below the 2.0 volts, which we should never even approach. So mix modeling is just completely out. You just never mix models of batteries in a mod, period. Just don't. You're utterly and completely depending on the safety circuitry. And if you're using a series mech, there's none of that. So that is just completely ruled out. Now these results don't extend to every battery and every mod and every setup to every vapor around the world. Just to get an idea that will guide some of the recommendations that I'll have later, and as to how much trouble an average vapor with batteries and mods in good condition, never abused, etc. What kind of ranges of voltage spreads between the batteries they might see over the use of the battery, and how much, for lack of a better word, trouble they could get in as the batteries get older and older. Which guides the recommendations I'm going to make, and we'll go into that next. Okay, so I don't forget, I've written the recommendations down because there's just too many of them for me to process and hold in my brain all at one time, so pardon my looking away from the camera to check these out. So things I recommend to do for marrying your batteries. Number 1, same model batteries bought at the same time. If you buy 2 from Illum and 2 from IMR batteries, I'm not calling that a disaster. But these are recommendations. I don't know if you buy from some other vendor, if those might be fakes. And then you get something from IMR batteries and you get fakes from some other company, and you put them all together. Now, that's not a married set. You've got fakes. So it's always better to get it from the same vendor if possible, and go not to the limit of what's possible in terms of marrying, how strict, that's what I'm trying to say, but do what you can to make it a truly married set. Use, charge, and store them together on the same charger, stored in same temperature overall, used in a mod. Now they don't have to be used in the same mod. Batteries are married to each other, not the mod, but you do want to keep them as a set. Keep them in perfect physical condition. This goes for any battery at any time. No dents, no scrapes. Keep the wrap in perfect condition. Keep the top ring insulator there. This is just part of the overall risk reduction part when using the batteries. If one battery in a set is damaged, or you start to see its voltage dropping way off, like you put them on the charger and one is starting to take longer and longer to charge versus the other, got to pull that one out of the set and retire the rest of the set. Those 2 batteries now got 100 cycles on them. You just can't take another battery and add it in there. Yeah, maybe that comes out just fine. Like here, you've only got, not too bad of a voltage thing, but we don't know if that's going to be true or not. I don't know everyone's setup. I don't know how everyone's mod is going to work, or truly if their battery is in a certain condition or not a certain condition, whether that 3rd battery you've added is a fake or not. It's just better to retire the other 2, get a flashlight. If you had 3 batteries and you have 2, well, it's an excuse to buy a 2 battery mod. If externally charging the batteries, which I recommend, they get rebalanced every time. So even though one might come down to a lower voltage while you're using it, they'll always get charged back up to the same 4.2, and they should come down to that same level each time. If you're charging them in USB, and let's say, they come down like this, after a few more cycles, they'll just get worse and worse, unless there's really good balancing in the mod, and the mod brings them back up. Don't count on that. Recharge externally. You get to get a charger that lets you see the amount of capacity going back in. You can track the loss of mAh over time. You can see voltages, you can check temperatures. Overall, it's just a much better way and helps lower the risks of using these batteries if you charge externally. Never use the bars on the charger or the voltage display in a mod for reading voltages, so for seeing how well your batteries are staying married. If you've got 4 bars on a charger, the difference between one bar or another could be 25% of the capacity of that battery's voltage over whatever range it's looking at. That's huge. You can't use that. One battery that's 1 bar higher than the other, we have no idea. That may be 1,000th of a volt, or that may be 0.2 volts. We don't know. Don't use that. For mods, some of them hold down a key or something like that, or you can read off battery voltages. A lot of mods do not have very accurate voltage display. Just don't trust them. Get a $10 voltmeter and you can check them, or a good charger. Those voltages are usually pretty accurate, and you can use that when you put them in the charger and see what the voltages are. See what kind of spread there is between the voltages. What I showed up here is there's no hard line between okay and not okay of a voltage spread. I'm asked a lot, Mooch, my batteries are 0.125 volts apart. Is that bad? And I go, we can't say. I don't know. I don't know the condition. I don't know what they were before. If they were 0.122 a year ago, now they're 0.125. That 0.125 is fantastic. If they were 0.001 last week and now they're 0.125, that's terrible. Something that's aging really quickly or being badly abused or is damaged. So I just can't say what's good or bad, but certainly anything less than, I would say, than a 0.1 volt spread when you get them new is no issue at all. Once you're getting up at a 0.3 volt spread, based on this testing and just thinking about how batteries would drop down and your dependency on safety circuitry, I'm thinking about the time you hit 0.3 volts, it's time to get a new set of batteries, or pull out the one that's always dropping to that low voltage. If there's 2 of them are holding pretty steady and one is always a lot lower, causing that 0.3 volt spread, retire this one. Keep using these other 2 in a 2 battery mod, or split them off singly and use them in single battery mods. For series mechs, don't go below 6.4 volts for 2 battery mech. That's 3.2 volts per cell. Then any kind of spread between them, like let's say a 300 millivolt spread between them, is going to keep you up still near 3 volts or so. Now, most people aren't going to go below 6.4 volts on a 2 battery mech, but for those who just want to get that last every little bit pull, if you put them back on the charger and you're down below 3.2 volts each or something, make sure you're always using new married sets and not try to get maximum number of cycles out of a married set. Again, it's about risk reduction. If the way to tell a married set is approaching end of its life, or one of them is, as I mentioned earlier, the difference between them is starting to grow. You started off at 0.1, maybe volts between. Now, over time, whenever you put them back in the charger, there's a 0.3 volt difference between them, or you're noticing as you're vaping down, the differences are starting to grow from week to week or month to month. It's time to retire that set, or certainly the one that's, if it's only 1 battery, retire that one. Now, I'm always asked things like, how can I break this, or where can I push it, or how can I not have to throw away my batteries? So people always have scenarios they ask me about, and we'll go into a couple of those. I call them can-yous. Can you recharge a married group individually? Yes. It's better to just get a charger, because it takes a hell of a lot less time. Just get a charger where you can charge the whole set all at once. You have 3 battery mods, get a 4 battery charger, or two battery chargers. Recharge all the same time. If not, charge one after another after another. Just do it all the same day. Don't charge one, a week later charge another, and a month later charge a third, then fish them out of the closet and go, yeah, these are married. No, top them all off together, or quickly top them all off. Again, risk reduction, do what you can to keep them married. Let's not push the boundaries on all these things. Can you split a married group? Yes, but if you split them, it's permanent. Now, if someone comes along and pulls a battery out and vapes a 25 watts with it, and puts it back in, is that a disaster? You have to replace everything? No, probably not. But I can't tell you a certain number of cycles at a certain power level or a certain number of abuse means you can't put it back in. So it's best just to keep them permanently together or permanently split if you do break them up. Can you use a married group, a married set in any mod? Yes. I mentioned earlier, batteries are married to each other, not the mod. This is assuming batteries are in perfect condition, they have the proper current rating for the different mods that are going into, etc. But you can use those batteries in any mod. Can you split up and remarry? Again, under limited conditions. And I get all kinds of variations of this question because I'm guessing this happens a lot. Just buy spare batteries, buy extra batteries. They're, in the end, they're cheap for 1-2 years worth of use, and you just don't have to worry about this. You don't have to think about this. Can you replace a battery in a married set? And this is just another variation we talked about before. It might be possible, but there are too many different situations and too many variations and too many unknowns, especially with fake batteries and the China cells. Bring a whole new equation into things. And it's changed how I've thought about married batteries. A year ago, if you asked me about these things, I would have different responses than I'm having now. I was much less worried about stricter marrying. But the China cells have greater variation between capacity, internal resistance, and etc. I don't know if it's by a wider group, where, let's say, Samsung might have 4 grades. The China manufacturers might only have 2, so there's wider variation in performance within any one grade. So from that, it's even more important because you're starting with wider variations if you're using some of the China cells that are coming out. Some of them are good performers. People are buying them. For those, even more so. I recommend marriage and a stricter marriage in terms of things you can and can't do. And in conclusion, marrying batteries doesn't mean we're safe. It's just frustration reduction, risk reduction, and performance improving. They're just a series of general practices we do. Follow, as strictly as you can to bring the risks down. The less strictly you follow it, the more the risks go up. If something starts acting weird, the mod or the battery, don't use it. Of course, keep them in good condition. If you wonder if you can do something or not do it, don't do it. Just default on the side of safety now, and it's good for you, and it's probably better for the batteries too. For those who've known me for a while, my thoughts about battery marriage over the past year or so have changed. If you spoke to me a year ago, I mentioned this earlier, I would have been much more of, yeah, if you do a little this, a little that, you're probably okay. But with these China cells and the greater variation, and realizing, seeing more, getting more into the mods and seeing more, how about some of them just spontaneously bursting into flames, not being used for 6 hours and other things that happen, and realizing just how little we know about the condition of our batteries, all the fakes that are out there, the older cells that people might get, all the other ways we can mismatch things. I've drifted more and more into recommending only a stricter battery marriage and asking the community that if you're asked to recommend it also to other vapers. It'll help us be safer, and that's always better for our community, especially with the increased scrutiny that we're under now. Soon, very much so by the FDA with batteries, and Underwriters Laboratories are now UL with UL 8139. They are writing, as we speak, the mod safety standards. And the more that we blow ourselves up, the stricter some of those things could be. Now, you might be thinking, oh, that's great, that's safety, that's fantastic. Except all it takes is one little sentence saying protected batteries only. No user accessible, user replaceable batteries. And entire classes of mods can be wiped off the face of the map in terms of what's legal in the view of the government. So the more we can do to self-regulate or self-police or to be safe, the better for the entire community. Thank you for watching.